Good morning to everybody, those here in the room and those out there in Zoom world. Apologies for getting a late start. We're having some technical challenges with connecting, and maybe that's telling us something that we need to improve and work on as the transition committee works forward on some of our facilities. My name is Mike Waslick. I chair our transition committee, and I'm also the resident board member on the board of directors here in IslandWalk. One of the first things I want to do today is I've invited a representative from A&D Pools to speak to us very shortly, in a very short conversation, telling us a little bit about one of the facilities or some of the facilities that we have, which some of the biggest assets that we are going to be acquiring. So one of our tasks as a transition committee is to take a look at all the assets that we as a community and we as residents are going to inherit. What kind of shape are they in? What's it going to be cost to maintain in the future? What do we have to do in the short run and the long run? So one of the vendors taking care of our pools right now is A&D Pools. And with that in mind, Jonathan, I thank you for being with us, and we're going to let you give us a quick education about the pools at IslandWalk. Thank you for
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for the introduction there. Nice to meet everybody, and appreciate the relationship that we've had thus far with Pulte and Castle. We value that relationship very highly and want to definitely maintain it at the highest level. We believe that they are the two of the companies that we work with that care very highly about the quality of the communities and everything that's going on there. So I want to just again thank them for this opportunity to work with them, and to the chance and opportunity to work with the board now moving forward in this transition. We've worked with them in the past for other properties, and then of course here at IslandWalk, we've been here for several years now. I think it's been a little bit over 2 years, and we've made a lot of good changes and a lot of advancements and improvements to the community, which have been fantastic. A couple of those things have been the spa. We renovated the spa at the club, the main resort area. Got that nice surface in there. We renovated the lap pool as well. Those were projects that went on really quickly, smooth, and without any hiccups. I think we finished both those projects at the same time under a 2-week window.
Jonathan, if I may interrupt you for a second, we're getting the microphones service set up for those people in the room here. So if you could hold on for just a second, okay?
So obviously we're having a little bit of a tough start here, so she's going to get the TVs up and running. I think we have everybody connected. We're having a little bit of a bandwidth and connection problem, so just bear with us. We're already almost 15 minutes in, so have some patience. We're trying.
What happens here? Yeah, just
So Jonathan, what we're doing here is trying to get the room connected for sound. The people in the room can't hear anything, so just bear with us. What's
okay? Can't get.
Let me try to figure it out. But let me do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to crank could speaker up if everybody's got their mic off and my speaker's high.
Yeah.
The room may be able to hear
A little bit.
Okay.
a little bit.
A
Yeah.
little bit, yeah.
Okay.
While you do that, I'm gonna try and
Right.
figure this out.
Our apologies. Again, we're gonna let him get started. I don't want to hold Jonathan up. He's got other things to do, and we'll crank it up.
So you have to mute your mic.
You want to mute it?
You have to mute your mic and I'm going to try and speak.
All right, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, Jonathan, give it a shot.
Okay. If everything's working okay now, I'll give us another shot here, and feel free to interrupt me if we need to pause again. So, just to continue on, we've renovated the lap pool and the spa at the main resort area. The resort pool is going to need to be done soon. Its original surface, and it's getting to the point where it's just getting old. And so just giving you a little bit of an update on that. The new clubhouse lap/resort style pool and spa, we maintain those as well. Those are beautiful new bodies of water, and they've been going really good. A few in the beginning, trying to get everything balanced properly with new equipment and that kind of stuff. But we're within a very quick, timely manner. That kind of covers most of that stuff. We look forward to making this relationship with the new board officially here within the next couple months, it sounds like. And any way we can serve you guys, let us know. If you got any questions to me directly, we normally deal directly with the management company, but you can always reach out to the transition team, and they can get my information, and I can talk to you then too. So however I can be of assistance.
John, you had told us previously that next year there could be a major renovation to the resort pool. Can you tell us what has to be done, when, and how long that might take?
Yes. So that process would need to be done. Again, there's a little bit of leeway on this, so I'd say within the next 2 years. We want to just get a good time frame that works with the schedule. I know residents, you got a busy season and a slower season, but there's going to be some people that are going to be not going to like the date, unfortunately. But you guys, we'll work with you on that the best that we can. We'll make it quick, so we can keep it closed for a very short amount of time. And the process that's involved with that is a resurfacing of the existing surface, and it's a thin layer that's over top. It's about a 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch thick, and that goes over the entire surface of the pool. And then typically at the same time we do the tile as well. It's good to update that. So we update all the cosmetic and visual components basically of the pool that you see. There's pretty much everything that you see will be updated and be new again. And then you get another good 15 to 20 years typically out of the new surface that we install. So, and I would say time-wise, we would plan on it being about a month on that size body of water that the pool would be down, and we would definitely try to beat that time frame and have in the past. So that would be a rough idea of the estimated time that the project would take as well.
One of the complaints that we get, or comments that are made, is that the new pool at the clubhouse, the water is too hot.
Yes, unfortunately, the new clubhouse does not have the function that the resort pool and the lap pool have at the moment. They have geothermal systems that are able to heat and cool the water. The devices and equipment at the clubhouse pool do not have the ability to cool the water. So it is warm in the summertime, definitely.
Can that be changed?
It can be changed. That's something that we can talk about as a group collectively. However I can be of assistance with that as well. We had mentioned in our last meeting that that we offer 2 different options for that. We can do geothermal units, which is what the resort pool and the lap pool have, are geothermal units, or we can do cheaper upfront cost would be something with what's called an air-to-air unit, and it's like a heat pump, basically an electric heat pump. And the newer versions of those are very good. We really like the new technology that's come out with that. And again, the upfront costs are significantly cheaper. You just need quite a few units, and those would replace the heating units as well. So the heating units there, we would replace those with heat pumps, electric heat pumps, and those would be able to heat the water and cool the water in the summertime.
Any committee members have any questions for Jonathan? Any comment? That was the design. Anything else? Jonathan, thank you very much for your time. We'll be back in touch as we move forward.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Now, again, my apologies for the challenges. Hopefully I'll yell a little louder for the people in the back and possibly here. Let me make a couple of things that I want to talk to you about, and then I'll get out of Chip's way, get back to another chair. Paul and I met with Rose Wallace, who's with Pulte and kind of manages our property from Pulte's perspective last week. And the purpose of our meeting was to start talking about projects as they see them have to be done going forward, and then projects that we may think going forward. I'll let Paul's going to expand on that a little bit more about. I want to mention a couple things that probably of interest to you that came out of the meeting. First of all, house count, total house count closes. She told us that at the end of August, there were 2,069 homes which are closed by Pulte, 2,069, which is 87% of the total of 2,391. Now, obviously, how fast things moving forward is anybody's guess. They obviously have some projections. The point to make here is this may be moving along towards turnover, maybe sooner, a little sooner than we thought. Okay, that could be good, that could be bad, but it's a lot of things to prepare for. One element that was in there that probably would be of interest to you is we will work some type of arrangement out with Pulte about the third gate. Those of you who have been back in the back of the complex, you know there's an opening back there for a potential third gate into the future to the road right now that goes nowhere. But we will make some positions with her relative to how Pulte will handle that prior to or at turnover. John Titler, who's not here today, but is on the Zoom, he and I met last week on a phone call with the HOA attorney, Stephen Adamczyk. Steve is an attorney for the HOA, not Pulte. His firm does not represent any developers. They represent only HOAs. And he has been on the IslandWalk account for 6 or 7 years. So basically it was more of a meet and greet, and basically as far as what he can and could do for us as we move into turnover and through transition. So that's going to be a great resource for us because obviously he has a lot of history here at IslandWalk. Again, he is not connected to Castle, nor is he connected to Pulte. Lastly, from my perspective, we have just started, I won't call them negotiations at this point, but discussions with Comcast relative to a new contract with Comcast. All right, that will be coming in the next 6 or 7 months. So that process has just initiated really as of yesterday. So that is another issue, is a point for me saying some of these things. You start to see the many different things that have to be taken care of as we slowly build up our own knowledge and understanding of operations of IslandWalk and what we have to do going forward. So Big service. We talked a little bit about the pools there a little bit, which I apologize for the inability to hear that, but also now, obviously, everyone's service relative to Comcast and the internet. April, yeah, the current contract expires in April. So the question then becomes, A, how fast can we get it done? And B, would it be addressed by the existing board or basically the new board that would be elected here? Now, I'll let John back or Chip back in his seat. You know, we're committed to transparency. The Zoom meetings, all of our meetings are basically, if you go to the IslandWalk website under the section Resource Center, click on Association Documents, and you will find a screen that pulls up Transition. If you go on there, you basically be able to find the Zoom meetings. Also, questions, IslandWalk Transition Committee at gmail.com. Send them in. We get a staggered amount. They come in every so often. We try to get back to them. One of the members on our committee address those if it's in their area of specialty as soon as we can. So we're trying to keep communications going, try to keep transparency going, and we'll have, again, at the end of this meeting, some questions from the floor and maybe some questions that come in Zoom. So we're going down. We're going to go through our committee meetings, committee reports, and Fred and Steve on finance are up first.
And your phone.
Okay, my name is Steve Freeman, and I'm the co-chair of the Finance Committee for the Transition Committee.
Somebody down there, turn off their mic, please.
Is that better? Yeah. All right. Okay. Right now, we're still in the information gathering mode. We're taking a look at different items with the financial reporting that's been done in the past. As far as the upcoming budget, we have spoken to Castle and requested that we be provided access to the budget to be able to provide some input towards that. As of yet, we really don't know what type of input, how much, and if any, that we'll be able to have into the 2021 budget. But that's something that is ongoing right now, and we're hoping to be able to provide some input. We are trying to get some line items in there for some costs that we know that will be related to transition, and so that we don't end up with any real surprises next year when the resident board takes over, and that so that we can keep going forward on a smooth basis. We're also looking at the reserves in terms of comparing what the velocity study has, how much money is there. We've got a fairly significant amount of money in reserves right now. I believe it's about 1.2 million, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Maybe a little more now.
Yeah.
1.2, 1.3.
Yeah, somewhere in the 1.2, $1.3 million area. And Velocity, who performs the reserve study for Pulte for the board of directors, I believe that they're in the process of getting ready to issue another reserve report. And that's usually about a 60 to 90 day process from when they started. And I believe they're just getting ready to start that. So That's where we stand right now on the main financial issues. And then Fred's going to talk about some of the other issues.
So the other aspect of finance that Steve and I work on together is insurance. And so I'll give you a little background. IslandWalk has 10 different insurance policies covering a range of things, covering the property, liability, pollution. If we needed it, it's there. These are very complicated documents, and I have 3 insurance, I will call them experts, homeowners that have spent their lives doing insurance, and they are in the process of reviewing each of those documents. One person has reviewed all 10 and has summarized them. He's done a wonderful job there. The other 2 individuals now are reviewing his work. We're about halfway through that review process. I would expect that by next month, we will have completed our reviews of this 3-person team. We'll report our results to this board here, and then we'll go into some next steps about looking at what I would call integrating those 10 policies. The biggest complexity that you have with insurance, especially when you have gotten different policies, is to make sure that there's no overlapping coverage, and more importantly, that there are no gaps. And so you need to have this integrated view of what is contained in all 10 in order to do that. And we'll be looking specifically at that area in the latter part of October and early part of November. I can give you sort of a 50,000 foot view. We have adequate coverage at a very good price, right? If you want better coverage, of course, it costs more. We don't see any really major problems with any of the insurance. I think if I had to recommend today, I would probably tell the board that at least 9 of the 10 policies should just be renewed. The only reason I can't make that pronouncement for the 10th policy is that the cost basis of that particular policy was the result of Pulte using what they call a risk group. Many, many different parts of Pulte all aggregating their risk for property, and as a result of that, getting a very good rate. If we are no longer part of Pulte, we may not have the advantage of that at the next renewal. So we'll have to just assess and see whether or not we can sweet talk the developer and letting us stay in that risk pool for a few years, and then we could do 10 out of 10. So as I said, I could go on and give you a lot of the details, but by and large, I think that we're making good progress. We're not seeing any very significant issues. We'll know better in about a month when we have reviewed all of them. So that's my report.
Good morning, everybody. Governance is a kind of a multi-stage process. We have in the declarations 13 articles that we have reviewed. We have made suggested edits of things to delete from the declarations. We have added verbiage to the declarations. And all 13 articles that have been reviewed, and they have been forwarded to legal and John Titler's team. Once John is able to see the total package of the declarations and relationship also to how they fit in with the bylaws and the articles of incorporation, it's anticipated he will then send his comments back to the Covenants Committee to make the appropriate edits. That some things that we did maybe aren't legal or they're contrary to the health and benefit of IslandWalk. So whatever those edits are, we will go and make them. We have looked at the bylaws. We have submitted the draft of the bylaws to the Governance Committee, Leon's committee. And as of several days ago, they received those and they're now reviewing. I think they meet on the 29th and they'll probably be talking about them some more. We've drafted code of ethics for board members. And that's within my committee now for review for editing. The multi-stage part of this is that we have sent the material to say governance, and also we have sent it out to legal. It comes back to us, and then we meet as a committee to decide even then as to what we're going to do with those, so that there is a final package or final declarations, final bylaws, final articles. And we say final, that's meaning that it's done at that moment that we have collectively agreed on, which then goes to Pulte for their review to see what they will accept of those recommendations and which they will reject. Their primary thing is to protecting their rights, because when even after turnover, they still are a landowner here. They have lots, and they have a position on the board for a period until they reach 95% fulfillment here. So we in the committee have gotten a lot of stuff, but we are also then waiting now for the editing and the review by the committees to see where we go from there. I think there's a lot of progress has come out of covenants to the other committees.
So it says, will there be transparency to the community as to what the edits are along the way? To the edits to the document.
Okay, will there be transparency to the edits as they go along? Best way that I can answer that is that what we send to Pulte may not have any, or not have, but some of it may not have any validity. So to try to put out to you as to what we expect changes to be, only to have the developer say no to it, I think that would maybe give false messages to the community and confusion. So my best answer to that is we will submit it as a package, and correct me if I'm wrong here for this group up here. Present the package to Pulte, see what they have accepted and what they have declined, and then we would know what the product is, and we can explain to the residents as to what we have. Like my committee the other day, just as an example, we were dealing with a thing for governance, and there was one paragraph that we were dealing with. It was changed 4 times in the day. It's fluid. Sometimes we find that there's better wording. Sometimes we find there may be a conflict. Sometimes we're able to substantiate with a statute. So anything that we're doing now is not hiding, and it sure could lead to confusion if we give you stuff that isn't going to be valid down the road. When the current process is, board will be elected on the day of turnover, the way it's set up now, or an earlier date set by Pulte. Once that new board is in place, the way the current governing documents state is that the new board can't make any changes for the first 6 months. So our goal is to try to be as efficient as we can so that when the turnover, the new board starts, it's giving IslandWalk and the board as clean a slate as we can to move on smoothly and continue with this community. Okay.
No, the thing is, okay, so I'm all right now? See, I'm not even allowed to use a remote at home on the TV, so this is tough sometimes. The aspect of governance, let me just give you an analogy, the way I look at it. You're in the 7th grade and you started dating somebody and you've dated them all the way through. Now it's 12th grade and y'all decide to break up. So you got all that angst and anxiety about what am I going to do next? Where do I go from here? Because you've always been with this person. So this is much where I think we find ourselves in this transition process. And so there's this concern about thinking and wisdom. And I think that I found a quotation I liked in the book of Proverbs. It says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. So bottom line is teamwork makes the dream work. And I want to explain to you or name to you the guys and ladies on our governance committee because they do an awesome job. We have Richard Obey, Debbie Stacy, Lynn Selby, Steve Schmitz, Larry Moffitt, Ron Palachek, and myself. So I got dealt a fantastic hand and I appreciate what they do. Governance, if you try to encapsulate it, is basically overseeing the direction of which way we go as an HOA. We are looking at 4 major components. The structure, what will it be in a flow chart? What officers and things will we have in there? Oversight responsibility, what are the job descriptions? What are the things going to do, the duties, managerial accounting, and committee functions. Talent, we need leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, we need leaders. A lot of people don't want to step forward, but this is your house too. So we need input, we need leadership, we need you to step forward and say, count on me. We'd love to have it. And about also fourthly, fourth structure we have will be the infrastructure. This is the policies, procedures. Basically like Chip was talking about covenants, this will be things that we're trying to interface. We don't live in a vacuum, so we like to know what finance is doing, try to keep them apprised of what we're doing. And currently we're in the process of wordsmithing right now. We're trying to work on security, the 3rd gate, also the back gate. I met with the security company and talked about needs, concerns. The length of service, the roles that board members will play. A big thing we're working on right now falls back on your shoulders. I'd like input. The best way to communicate. Man, I don't, hearsay is a murder. That really doesn't help anybody on hearsay, so be careful. We want to talk about in our group, communication policies of board to members, members to board, residents to property manager, website, maintenance of the website. So we have a lot of things to do. We've lived in this relationship. Now it's time to get a new boyfriend or girlfriend. And so we need to start. So bottom line is governance will not go anywhere without your input. You guys are owners. Be loud and proud. So let's work together. Thank you.
Thanks, Leon. John Titler, I think, is on the line. John, do you want to anything to add today?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? I don't know whether anybody can hear me or not. Got it? Okay. Sorry about that. What I want to cover is just briefly to sum up some of the things with regard to the legal committee and some of those things that have been mentioned. Chip mentioned the declaration and amendment process for the governing documents in some detail. And I just want to point out with regard to the question about transparency that if we were to try to maintain transparency with regard to all of the things that are going on before we come to a product that will go before the whole committee, it would entail change after change after change. The major task in terms of the changes that we're seeking at this point is to bring the governing documents into the present day and what the functions are in the community. This declaration was filed in 2004, so it's 16 years old. And though IslandWalk is very much like it was initially intended to be, in many ways it's a completely different situation. And there are many things in the covenants, in the declaration, and even more in the articles of incorporation and the bylaws that are essentially outdated and don't really have any reflection in the reality of the process. And those are the primary things that we're seeking to change. Those changes are not going to affect the daily functioning, because all we're trying to do with regard to those categories of things is to make the language and the documentation reflect the actual reality. And I think we're well on our way toward that. I think that will be a successful effort. In terms of producing a change document, there aren't going to be huge changes that anybody's going to see or recognize in the way the community operates and functions. I do want to just reiterate one point, and that is that there are three major sets of documents that govern the community. The first is the declaration. The second are the articles of incorporation for the corporation itself. The third are the bylaws for the corporation. The declaration, it can only be amended by the declarant, who is Devasta, or as some refer to it as Pulte. They have the sole power to make those changes prior to the turnover date. We do believe that changes will be made and that they will be reflecting the reality today. The other two documents have differing change requirements according to the statute and according to their own internal process. And those are changeable by the board of directors prior to transition, and by the board of directors, and in some cases, a vote of the members after transition. The key to the work that I and my committee are doing is just to make sure that we don't have to do things more than once, and that the legal documents that define the community and its institutions are in compliance with the statutory requirements, and also that they reflect the reality of today. And we're well on our way towards that. There will be other legal tasks as we go through transition. There won't be anything that's probably a real controversial change. If there are going to be changes like that, those will be something that most likely will take place after the transition process itself. With that, I'm certainly open to any questions if anybody has any. Yes, that finishes my presentation.
Aaron, okay, thanks. So if I may, John and Chip, as a homeowner, I'm not involved directly with the Legal and Covenants Committee, but I tend to look at this as there's the language changes that you talked about. So in the current documents, you have language like neighborhoods within IslandWalk. We don't have separate neighborhoods within IslandWalk. There's one, but the documents have language that speak to neighborhoods. Those are the types of things that John and Chip are working to get out of it because they don't make any sense. They never did. There's other issues that are more contentious issues that have to be discussed at length, and we need to understand where residents' heads are at. So we've talked about things, the extremes of unlicensed drivers in golf carts. We're not going to go out and make changes to rules as a committee of 7 without understanding what does the community want. So there's a portion of this of what do we want to be as a community when we grow up, and getting that information in and then making changes as needed going forward. So they're working that first part, the more contentious parts. That's going to take a lot of conversation and input. So let me talk about building and ground. So, I've said this before, just a great group of people. I think there's a total of 9 of us that are actively working this. And what we've essentially done is broken down into 8 main areas that we have to get our arms around, and we're certainly getting our arms around them. So one of them is benchmarking. So we've been out talking to other communities. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. A lot of people have been through this transition process. We want to learn from what they've done, and we've gotten some outstanding information, including from Grand Paradiso, who's about 4 to 6 months ahead of us in the transition process. So understanding what they've done it has been a lot of help. And we've talked to IslandWalk, we've talked to Plantation, and there's other communities that we're meeting with over the next weeks and months. Second area, we've talked a lot about our lakes and our lake banks. Right now, the main focus is on understanding what was designed and what the permits say. So you hear the acronym SWIFT-MUD, which is the Southwest Florida Water Management District. So Russ Geary in particular has been very actively involved with SWIFT-MUD, getting all the permit information. He's gotten massive files from them on all the drawings of what was originally submitted for our community, and we're working through that. We had a great call with the stormwater manager for the city of Northport to have an understanding of, from a stormwater management standpoint, the flow of water from roof to gutter to yard to street or lake. Lakes interconnected to the littoral shelf, spill over into the spillway out on 41, eventually going to the Myakka River. And what we're trying to do is gain an understanding of, was everything put in properly, and are we okay with regard to flood management and storm water management? So there's a whole slew of issues around storm water management and the pumping systems in here. We also have a lot of drainage issues, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when I make a couple comments on, communications. Drainage issues exist throughout the property, but we need to define what's a true drainage issue where we have poor design leading to standing water in roadways or sidewalks, and what is a nuisance. So we need to separate that, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Trees, talked about that in the last meeting. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but currently looking at how we obtain pricing for the assessment and long-term management of the 10, 12, 15,000 trees that will eventually be here on campus. Biggest one out there is infrastructure. I mean, just in general, there's a couple of the guys in particular, Clyde Burrell and Ed Donovan, have put together a checklist, which is essentially the ability to inspect every square inch of street, sidewalk, Miami gutter throughout the property, looking for unraveling of the roadway, sunken manholes, puddling, significant cracks in the sidewalks, the bridges. So we've begun that process of doing the inspections, photographing all the issues, and we're going to turn that over to Pulte as we go. We were originally going to do every single street and just dump it all on them, but Pulte is asked to be notified of significant issues that we have immediately because they want to act on those, and I'll say a little bit more on that also in a minute. There's also a massive piece of just information and document management. So all this great stuff that we're collecting, we have to have the ability to keep that in an organized fashion so that forevermore people don't have to do this sort of hunt the wampus that we're doing now, trying to find every single document. And there's also a piece where we have to liaise with the financial guys, Steve and Fred, on, what are we determining with regard to short and long-term issues from a money standpoint for some of these corrective actions. So pretty significant amount of work, but I'm actually really happy with the way this is going. I think we're moving at a pretty good clip, and it's just a great team of people, and we're always looking for more help. I mean, these streets alone, if Paul Apoliski is here, and I talked to Paul before the meeting and said, hey, would you be willing with his background to sort of jump in and help us with the inspections? Of course, he said yes, and so we've added another member. If you got a construction background, please contact me. So just a second on Pulte. So in the meeting that Mike referenced, we met with Rose Wallace from Pulte, and we were a little surprised that they want all the information sooner rather than later. They don't want to wait till turnover. They want to start acting now, whether it's bridge repairs, sidewalk repairs. So we talked about this engineering study. We're putting together the specification for an engineering firm to come in and go through wall to wall, floor to ceiling, through every square inch of the property. Well, Pulte just signed a $30,000 engineering study with an engineering firm to come in and do what I would say is a significant amount of the work that we were planning to do in X number of months. And I said, well, that's great, but we can't necessarily take in a naive way everything that you turn over, but will you give us that information? And Rose had said, every single thing we get from that engineering study, we're going to give you. I said, are you going to core drill roadways to make sure we don't have problems with base in roadways? She said, yes. I said, will we get information from the core drills? Yes. So again, we're not going to be naive here. We're going to do our due diligence, but I firmly believe Pulte wants to get everything done that they believe they should get done, and that we're going to push them to get done if possible, and not waiting till next year to get started. So that's a good thing. And Pulte actually has a pretty good rep towards that. So if I may, Mike, let me just keep yapping for one more minute. So I think this is back to the communication piece. So, we're going to do absolutely the best we can. That's all we can commit. We're kind of all in effort-wise to do this. We all live here. We love this place. We want to do this right. So we're going to communicate on every issue that we can. That said, there's going to be some issues that we're going to come back with answers people aren't going to like. And I'm going to just give you one example. When I met with the city of Northport, we had a series of questions and then talked with Pulte on the same issues, this issue of drainage in yards. So there's a lot of water that sort of sits in roadways. So the reality is everything that's written, including in the Pulte warranty that we all received, says you may have water in your side yard. It may remain wet a lot of the time, but if it was not identified in the first year, Pulte's not obligated to do anything. It's the homeowner's responsibility. Not the answer anybody wants to hear, but that's exactly the way it's written. When I talked to Northport, the only guidance around standing water and drainage issue is after 72 hours, if you have standing water, it's deemed an issue, not because it's a puddle in your backyard, but mosquitoes can start to nest and hatch. So there's sort of a thing out there about after 72 hours, water should be gone. 72 hours is a long time. So, so we're going to keep getting information on that, and we're going to try to provide to the street reps, who are a big resource for us. We want to provide to the street reps. We need you to go onto your streets, work with the residents on the streets, and identify issues, but we want to be able to define those issues. We don't want to say, give us every puddle in a yard as an issue, because if it wasn't reported in that first year, or if it's not sitting around for 72 hours, it's not an issue that we really have any ability to do anything with. But we want to get street reps heavily involved as soon as we can, but we want to be able to give them good guidance. The other one, I think this applies to it. Anything that we're doing, we got to have feedback. So I know in our last meeting, we had about the concept of a survey. Now, we haven't defined specifically how we're going to do a survey, but we need to be able to get feedback from residents on what are the issues that are most important to you. So like Mike talked about Comcast. You know, is it important to you that the cable contract include just television? Do we want it to include television and internet service? Do we want a higher bandwidth? I mean, there's issues that, and certainly a ton of them for Ben Leon on governance, that we got to have a good understanding of what's important, what's a priority to the residents. So I don't know where the survey stands. If I want to say it was Leon raised his hand and said he could do the survey, but we need to get an understanding from residents to define priorities and importance. I better stop talking.
All right. Paul?
Could I make a comment on one thing that Paul said?
Absolutely.
So one thing, and I think this is a very good example of how our teams up here are really interconnected teams and not separate teams, because the issues that we face are all interconnected. Paul mentioned the water runoff, our ponds, going into the reserves and then into the Mayaca River. That interconnection starts in our covenants, so it's both a covenants and a legal issue, where we have promised the Southwest Florida Water Management Authority that we would make sure that no pollution enters on our property. And more than that, that we will not introduce any noxious species or invasive animals or something that would somehow pollute the aquifer. All right. Then it goes to insurance, because we have a robust policy for pollution to protect us, indemnify us should we fail in that endeavor. But then it goes over to contracts, because we have to make sure that every vendor that we have on site that deals with any sort of chemical, that they themselves have insurance for the laying down of that chemical and to protect us and them against any pollution. So you can see how some issues just go right across this table. And so it's a very important coordination that we have to make sure that we're covered in all of these aspects. I just wanted to use that as a good example.
Yeah. Thanks, Fred. I want to expand on an answer Chip gave relative to transparencies. I think that was zoomed in, that question, Paul. Okay. Am I on, Fran? Okay, great. All these actions and studies and reports and everything, obviously, we're obligated to take whatever our decisions are forward to a combination of the existing Pulte board and or the new homeowners board. The thing that we will do, we haven't talked much about this, but this is what's going to happen, is that whenever these reports come in to this committee as a whole, this committee as a whole will make a decision, and as far as the recommendations coming from the team. And when those decisions are made, I think what's as important for you to realize, and back to the transparency, my opinion is we need to be sitting here in front of you to making those decisions. Making the final, if it's a vote on a particular item, be it be a change in the covenants, be it be a budgeting issue, whatever. But I think we need to be sitting here and discussing it amongst ourselves. And I apologize for the awkwardness of the Zoom and in the meeting here, but I think that's the real part of transparency. You know, we get emails all the time. We get your feedback. Whenever we get ready to do a survey, we need more feedback. All right. But then we decide as a committee. All right. Whether it's a 5-2 vote or a 4-3 vote or whatever, you need to see what and how those decisions were made. Okay. It could be something as related to golf carts, trimming hedges, or something as important as the reserve funding. So I wanted to make that clear, you know, as far as our commitment to how we are going to make these decisions going forward. Concern that we all have up here right now is finding this information back from Rose, where we might have been talking maybe June, July for turnover. All right. We are now possibly moving that up to March, April, depending upon the home build out. So we need to get our ducks in line and get ready. So with that in mind, I'd like to open the floor, and I don't know if we have any questions that came in from the audience, but here in the room, if there are questions, I'd like to hear. Keith.
Given the amount of time that's transpired under castle management and what I view as their inability, unwillingness, whatever it might be, to enforce rules, regulations, whatever it might be, how does the committee view that failure over the past several years, and whether it does or doesn't impact on the validity of the documents that you're now reviewing, implementing, what have you. Leads to other things, but just a basic, I drive down my street and I see half and half houses. I see houses, duplexes that are two different colors. The tree issue hasn't been resolved. What does the committee feel relative to what's been happening over the past few years with our manager?
Okay, that's a pretty wide open question. I'm speaking for myself, and then other committee members can speak for themselves. Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay, the question, if I can paraphrase that, Keith, okay? The question was, yeah, thanks. How does the committee feel?
You just want to turn on your video?
Yeah.
I don't know why your video is not on.
I don't know either.
You can go.
Okay, as long as my voice is on. The question was, how does the committee feel about the operations or the performance of Castle as it relates to the enforcement of various rules, regulations, and covenants to date? Is that fairly accurate description? Keith?
Does their performance impact the legality and enforceability
Okay. Well, I want to see two parts of that. And again, I'm speaking for myself on this particular part. We get questions often about how do we evaluate Castle's performance? Okay. I really believe that's an issue for the new board. Will help as a committee. However, I think at turnover, okay, which is going to be sometime either the first half of next year, to say we're getting a whole new management company, I think would be catastrophic at that point in time. Now, a year after that, a new board's in place, things settle down, the board can evaluate and they can make that decision. But my recommendation at this point would be, I don't think changing a management company at that point in time would be a wise decision, okay? The second part of that, and I had a long conversation with Jeff Siddle about this yesterday. There are so many issues that people bring up that are in a gray area relative to how they relate to the covenants. And one of the things that I think most of the board members here will say is that Castle and the board need to be consistent. All right. And if there is a covenant that needs to be enforced, then it needs to be enforced. We can't look the other way. If we don't like it, then it should be changed. But I think what my answer is, I think there's been some inconsistencies in the past, and that we need to be more consistent on how we enforce the rules that are on the books. And unfortunately, what people don't like to hear sometimes is that, or they forget, that they signed up to join a HOA. And when you do that, you become part of a club or an association, and you've signed up that you're going to abide by the rules of the HOA. We all seen the Geico commercial when whatever her name is chopping down the mailbox. Cindy? We may get her on staff. That's the extreme. But how do we get to that middle point, which is a very difficult thing for Castle or any of us to do, but we have to get there and be consistent. A, that the policies, as Chip are putting together, are fair policies and consistent with state laws. And two, that then they are administered by Castle or whoever else in the future consistently. I don't know. Again, I'm speaking for myself, and I invite any other committee members to answer that, but I don't know if I try to be as direct about that as I can be.
Have they damaged the validity of our legal documents by virtue of how we have been managed over the past several years, starting with Legionnaires and all the rest of the following items? And if they haven't, then God bless us. If they have,
I don't think we know the answer to that unless one of their decisions are legally challenged. So if you say, hey, you've ignored this and you're making me do this, but in the past you've ignored it, I don't know. I don't know if any of us here can answer that.
you've got a legal committee that's.
Yeah, John, I don't know if John wants to weigh in or. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Chip.
I've been involved with covenants here for almost 3 years. And what I have found over that time, and also currently doing the edits, there's a lot of ambiguity within the writings of declarations, specifically in the one you're kind of talking about is Article 9, which is what homeowners are responsible for and what the HOA is responsible for. And it's not an excuse or to cover HOA. There are times that they frustrate me and I wish they would do some things that they don't do. However, what my committee has strived to do is to make clarifications so it's more clear as to what's okay and what isn't okay. Part of that goes back to you're talking about attached homes of being 2 different colors and stuff. Trying to make it so that when the new board starts and whatever management system we have here, if a resident comes and says there's issue here or what do I have to do there? It's more clear as to what really has to be done. There's a lot of stuff in those declarations that I don't know that they contradict each other, but they are not clear. And that's what we're trying to strive so that hopefully whoever is going to be managing us has a clear mandate as to what things they have to follow, and then they would be able to address them. They say some things now you look at and it's, well, do we really have the authority to do this or don't we have the authority to do that? Because it's not written or the writing is unclear as to what to do. And you sure can't start imposing something on people if it isn't clear that they have the right to be able to do that. So that's one of the goals that we're trying to do with our editing and drafting new stuff.
There was one question that was sent in, asked about the budget. Our budget is a calendar year budget. The board will vote on it in November. I think it's November 7th. There will be sometime in October, there will be a budget meeting for residents to review the draft of the budget. My guess that'll be in the latter half of October, but I think it's November 7th when the board votes on it, and then it is a calendar year budget for the year 2021. Now, that doesn't preclude the new board or even the existing board from modifying that budget anytime in 2021, obviously with a vote of the board. So, any other questions? Sir, I think you had a question.
Yes, I have a question regarding insurance. You talked about the risk pool. Is there a risk pool available for HOAs that we can take advantage of the pricing that Pulte now takes advantage of?
Yeah, we're investigating that to see if there are alternatives, you know, to, and one of our best resources for that is our HOA. Castle would know that as well. 9 of the 10 policies are just direct purchases, just one is a risk pool, so we're just gonna have to investigate to see if there's another risk pool that we could use that would help us in that regard. We don't know today.
One other question, please. In regard to Comcast, are we talking or negotiating with Comcast without the benefit of any competition in that negotiation?
That is still a work in progress. And back to your first question, we have invited Atlas Insurance to join in on our Zoom meeting, and they will be here on October 22nd at our next meeting online, basically to answer some of those insurance questions and just give us an overview of, again, what are we buying relative to insurance and how they view risks and things that Fred is right. He has got some tremendous people helping him, and they've done an awful lot of work. And so we've asked him, the gentleman from Atlas Insurance, just to join in for a couple minutes at the beginning of the meeting on the 22nd of October. Way in the back, the gentleman in the back.
Yes, my comment questions are on the east and south gate. At the meeting last time, it sounded like somebody told me or somebody decided that the east gate right towards the ballpark is going to be completely shut off. Now, my comment, I talked to several people about this, and they were really kind of upset that would be to leave us only one entrance to IslandWalk, and for the problem there, it would be a real mess. Now, true, Minnesota Beach Road is sometime going to be built, then we would have 2 gates on the south end. And I know there was an article in the paper earlier this week that Sarasota County had a 15-year transportation planning meeting, and they did not talk about extending Minnesota Beach Road past us. So what's the status on this east gate? And the other question I have is, at the meeting a couple weeks ago, it was said there's security issues at the east gate. Well, in 15, 20 years, when we get Minnesota Beach Road is eventually built, will we not have the same security issues on the south end?
Sir, I'm going to do the very best I can to repeat your question. Your concern is about the east gates.
Unmute yourself.
All right, the question was about the east gate, and the other question was?
Okay, if the if there's so many security issues at the east gate, will not the future with the south gate, and so the Beach Road is open, will we have the same problems there?
All right, sir, I met with the security company that we currently have a contract with because a question came out of the last meeting about the traffic flow that's coming in and out of that, the back gate, I call it. Talk to them about what we need to do in transition and what we need to work on. That gate should not be open all the time for anybody in the world to come sightseeing and come through. We've had that discussion. We'll continue that discussion. There'll be a third gate, which I will make the assumption we'd like to duplicate what we have at the east gate or even make it better there. So we have 3 gates, 3 ways in, 3 ways out of the community. But our job at this juncture, because of construction going on, it's open, all the time. It says until 6:30 back there. It is an issue. It is a concern. I've met with the police chief, if you will, of the company that has it. And we have a team that's working on trying to come up with viable solutions.
Okay.
If you have any kind of suggestions you'd like to make, please send it to me and I'll bounce it off those guys.
We have an unofficial verbal commitment from Pulte that as far as the Minnesota Beach Gate, Road Gate, that we will work out some kind of financial arrangement with them because there's nowhere to go, is that they will temporarily close that off. I'll probably fence it off sometime next year. They will provide us with some type of financial amount of money that the board or the HOA would escrow potentially to set up that gate to be installed at a later date. And at that time, and if the road never comes about, that money would be held by the HOA to be determined done with whatever the board decides at that time. So, yes, sir, in the back.
Yeah, and I heard you correctly say that Pulte would not do anything about the drainage problem between houses unless it was reported the first year of construction. Is that correct?
So the question was, did the resident hear correctly that Pulte will not consider drainage issues if not reported within the first year of construction? So the short answer is yes, that is true, that the way the warranty guide is written, and I'm just looking at the language in the warranty guide, it specifically says that they're responsible for installing drainage properly in swales, and if there's an issue, it needs to be reported within the first year. That's exactly how it reads. Not the answer a lot of us want to hear. I have a very wet side yard, and I know of other neighbors that have it. I didn't report it in the first year, so per the warranty guide, it's an issue that Pulte, I believe, will dig in and say that's not their obligation to fix. So again, that is the answer. As unfortunate as it is for some residents, that is the current answer. We'll keep looking at it, but again, we're trying to communicate as we go. But based on the conversation with the stormwater manager in Northport and Pulte and reading the guide, it seems pretty clear.
My name is Tom. I'm a new resident, both IslandWalk as well as my first crack at an HOA. So first off, thank you for volunteering in your roles. Greatly appreciated. You briefly, when you talked about water management, you talked about street rep. Now with COVID-19 hitting me when I moved in, haven't met a lot of people, etc. In short, what's the role of a street rep?
I was a street rep, and look where it got me. Yeah. Yeah. The question was, what is the role of the street rep? I think it's generically speaking, a communication link between the various management and governing boards and bodies of the HOA and taking messages and information back to your street neighbors. All right, on my street, I know our street rep, basically, there's a meeting of street reps. It used to be, what, every 2 months? Almost every month. Right, and Castle would pretty much manage those meetings, bringing people up to date on issues, et cetera. Street reps would go back, send out a group email to their street neighbors and just say, here's what was discussed, any feedback or any comments. So they're a vital communication link. We had a meeting with them about a little over a month and a half ago, and inviting them and introducing them to this process and trying to, again, gather input from them as they gather input from their neighbors.
Unmuted here. It's envisioned that the street rep has a two-way communication responsibility. They are the eyes and ears of the street. So if they see a problem on the street that is not specific to a homeowner, that it maybe it's the sidewalk or some plantings or something like that on the street, they have in the past been very vocal about bringing up that issue for that street to the HOA, to Brightview, or whomever it was that was responsible for that. So homeowners can rely on them to bring up issues that were beyond their individual home. And so they have that responsibility as well.
You might want to tell people how they can find out who their street rep is.
The HOA office keeps a list of all street reps, so if you contact the office, they can tell you who it is. Paul.
That just leads into my question and suggestion for and incorporate that into these bylaws, the articles, the governance.
Excellent point. The points being made is that there is nothing officially recognized. The street reps are not officially recognized in any of the governing documents in the community. I noticed Chip has taken a note, and we'll try to incorporate something in to define their purpose and role so that they are a vital piece of the communication link. Thank you. Keith. Yeah, go ahead. He's fine.
Just a quick comment and a question and a comment. I like the Zoom meeting process. I use it in some of my other activities, some of the other things I'm involved with. The question is, have you considered working with Castle and maybe Mark purchasing a more robust broadband capability for the event center, getting a, this isn't a criticism, this is because I work with getting a business Zoom account that would let you have several hundred, if not 1,000 people on that account. And also considering purchasing meeting equipment and setting up a room. So cameras, microphones, so you're not relying on individual laptops. I know some businesses that have been able to set this up for $2,500, $3,500. It's not difficult to do. You're just going to need the budget to do it. We go into another COVID lockdown in the fall and winter, not only the board, but I think there's other organizations here at IslandWalk, whether it's book clubs or whatever, that would probably benefit from it. So I encourage you to have somebody at Castle take a look at getting a little bit longer.
Yeah, we have, the comment and the question was, what are the Zoom capabilities of, and I guess that's an appropriate question because we've shown we probably don't have very good Zoom capabilities this morning. But the answer to that is yes. In fact, we just bought a smaller package, Zoom package, for our various committees. Fran can speak to what size the council has purchased for the larger community. And we also are been very disappointed in the connectivity in the facilities up here. That is a matter, if you'd like to talk to us and get involved with that, I do have a couple of residents who profess to be very capable in IT that are going to come in here and say, hey, what the heck can we do to improve this whole complex, because its connectivity is terrible. So, Fran, I don't know if you want to touch base on that.
So Castle did purchase a Zoom account for the transition committee to use at their leisure for any transition endeavors. And so it is up to 100 participants. So they will have all of their abilities and capabilities at their leisure. Like, I don't have to be there physically like right now that I have to set them up. So if, for example, Paul needed to host a buildings and ground meeting on a Wednesday at 7 p.m., he will be able to log into Zoom and do that by himself without needing the assistance of a Castle associate, which is good because it gives them a lot more power and control for that. As far as these meetings go, with a larger audience where we are required to invite the entire community, we are in charge of that. And that's why I'm here today assisting with that. And I'm not sure, as like Mike said, Mike will be having somebody come in and look at the Wi-Fi capabilities. Unfortunately, Lifestyle hasn't been informed of what the process or protocol will be with that, but we are looking into it and we want to
Get that out of my side with you. My tongue is bleeding here.
Okay.
So
Keith.
let me just
Oh, go ahead.
quickly, so I think Joel.
Wait, hold
Keith, just 1 second. I just want to answer that quickly, sorry. So the reality is, to have a facility this size and have the troubles that we have with connectivity and not having cameras and single microphones, it's a little bizarre. We don't have that, but I think what it takes is just a small group, get together, determine what is required, and present that to Castle and Pulte. It's shocking to me that we have such poor broadband capability here at the pools. So it has to be addressed, because this should never happen. We should, 10 a.m. meeting comes on and we're rocking and rolling. So I think the answer is we have to fix it. And I will commit, my wife will kill me, but I'll commit to join that group with you, because this is a pretty significant frustration. So let's get some people together and get this dealt with.
Okay.
Thanks. I'm done.
Keith.
Mike, several things have been mentioned that I think need more clarification. We're going to have a budget presentation, implementation in November, okay? When I work back from that and don't know what we're asking for relative to this committee's need for legal and engineering studies, I have a question as to, do we have sufficient time and are you prepared relative to implementing within the budget process funds for this transition? Because we have been told, and apparently it's not written in stone, that a transition would only take place at an annual meeting. I'm guessing that might not be accurate, might be a goal or whatever. But since we haven't had an annual meeting, might be hit at about the time we would normally have an annual meeting. How do you feel about where we stand, how prepared we are for that, that eventuality? And if you can shake some money out of poultry, we've been trying for years to have them participate in the roads, which they are a huge detrimental component. And I find it hard to believe that they didn't put in a geothermal with a new pool. I guess that was an assumption relative to, you gave us a Cadillac here, Chevy at the new, I did not anticipate that. So Paul, you get the audio, and Mike, you get us the geothermal for the new pool.
You want to step in front?
And the velocity report. If you're just
I'm done. You're done. All right.
starting, how do we implement that in the budget, man?
All right. So the question was, there was a larger question about what do we do about the budget, especially since there would be very little time to react to it. It is a frustration where we have been engaged with Castle and with the board since June about this very issue. We have not been shy about communicating to them what our needs are. They have been equally direct that they have a process, they will follow their process, which basically means the budget will come out in late October and we'll have a chance to really be a thumbs up, thumbs down. However, reading between the lines, I think they know what our needs are, right? I don't think I'll be particularly upset when I see the budget. I think there will be some, if not a sufficient amount of money for transition. The backup to that, as we said, is that budgets can change. If we do have a new board come in anywhere between April and June, one of their first acts is to have a supplemental and said, okay, we didn't have enough money for the financial part, for an engineering study, whatever it was, and we're prepared to recommend to them that they assess that, right? That means that everyone's dues will increase because of that. But we're hoping that that money will be put into the budget. It's not their first rodeo. They know the kinds of things that a new board will need to do. So I suspect there will be some on there. I'm hopeful that it will be enough. That's really the best that I can tell you right now, because they're really keeping their budget process very close to the vest. With regard to the, you asked a question about the reserve. We're in the process of making sure everybody on the finance team knows exactly what's in the current reserve study. They're reviewing something that the finance committee issued about a little over a year ago, our assessment of that reserve. So that way, when the reserve study comes in, which is almost about the same time the budget is coming in, it usually comes in November, and that defines how much money will be placed in the reserves, that we'll be able to give them a quick turnaround and feedback on that. We have discussed among the committee, we haven't decided yet, based on either the adequacy or the inadequacy of what we consider to be velocity work, we may commission our own independent reserve study. Now, reserve studies in and of themselves require engineering, on-site engineering to look at all the facilities and estimate how much it would cost to repair or replace them within 30 years. So it's not a cheap undertaking. But if people are very concerned that somehow the current velocity study is inadequate, this will give us another benchmark in order to look at it. But at the end of the day, what you will have is the opinion of 2 engineering groups. And then you have to decide, well, what do you want to do with that information? You know, it could be that we will use it to negotiate some give back money from the developer. It could be that we said, well, to within, you know, a reasonable degree of uncertainty, things are aligned and we'll just let it go. So we have those items in our back pocket as well. So that's our plan for what will happen with the reserve.
Yeah, and Fred has hammered away at the process, the budgeting process that is, and we have done the best we can to kick the door down, so to speak, that we can have as much input as we can, and it's been limited. It's just a fact of the life here. Yeah. But one thing to keep in mind here, and Chip mentioned this to me a little bit earlier, just because transition starts or even turnover took place, Pulte is not absolved from their obligations to us. All right. So even though the new board's in place, Pulte still has an obligation, to this place relative to streets, relative to any other construction deficiencies that we may find, or any other type of financial deficiencies. So this was the best thing, I think, in my year and a half of working with this whole process. The day I heard that, because I think we were all thinking, oh my gosh, we got to get this ready, because when turnover comes, boom, they're gone. We'll see you later. Goodbye. No, the answer is no. They have a 2 to 4 year obligation to us. So, and keep in mind, they're going right down the road. Okay. They're going right down the road to build another 1,200 homes roughly. And they have told us half of their business is repeat business. They believe a lot of people are going to come from here and move down there. So they don't want a bad name. They don't want a bad name, and they want to get out of here as smoothly and as cleanly with happy campers here as best they can. So we'll keep looking at it. We know there's money in the budget. We're going to be covered legally on the legal side. The question is going to be on the CPA side, as far as transition providing a committee providing some audit check, and on the engineering side. Those are things we have to look at. Right. Exactly. Okay. Anything else? Okay.
So there's a couple online questions. One of them, John has said he'll answer, and it's, do we intend to have external legal counsel representing the residents of the community? So John, I'll throw that over to you.
Actually, Mike just gave the answer, but in our conversation with the attorney who has represented the HOA, and by virtue of that, not the developer, not the board as a separate entity from the association, but the HOA itself, we already have outside counsel. And we're confident that this firm has the ability to handle any problems that may come up, and also that they are in fact independent counsel. They have no relationship with DeVosta or Pulte. They have represented the association as the association for 6 or 7 years. And will continue to do so. And it was our judgment that unless some good reason comes up, that relationship should just go forward. So the answer to that question is we already have it. I just want to remark real quickly that somebody asked about the cost of the resurfacing of the event center pool, or of the main pool, the resort pool. There is an item in the velocity study which has been the basis for the assessment of reserves that sets out an expense of $78,000 for resurfacing that pool during calendar year 2021. So that's there. That's actually all I have.
I don't know if this is a question you can answer, Mike, but it says, does Pulte, DeVosta, IslandWalk Board, or this committee have any projected parameters as to complete reopening vis-a-vis COVID-19? I'm just not sure who who would answer that question?
I don't
I
know.
think it goes back to Pulte.
Yeah, Pulte and Castle, no.
Yeah.
We don't.
What else? All right, one last question. Again, I'm not sure. It's regarding if Castle decided to leave, if they have a 60-day notice clause in their contract. If Castle decided to leave when Pulte leaves, are we prepared to fill that gap? Would there be chaos if Castle bailed out within 60 days? Are we prepared if they decided to do that?
I don't think we are prepared from the standpoint because all indications from Castle is they are very anxious to remain here. Obviously, we are a very large account in their business. So I know we have talked to some other management companies very much just on the surface. We've looked around at options. I know Steve has been involved with other HOAs where they self-manage. Some have self-managed, then gone back to managers. Some have had management companies that go to self-management. So we have just scratched the surface as far as looking at potentially other companies. And as I said a few minutes ago, I would not recommend that initially to make the change right out of the chute. I think that would be more challenging than any new board would want to do at that point in time.
I just want to put this kind of in perspective. The challenges that a new homeowner board will face will be immense. They have to get themselves organized. They have to figure out how to run the day-to-day operation and oversight of that. They're going to have to make decisions on insurance policies, on contracts, on the HOA. All these things will be on their plate. One of our charters is to tell them how many of those things they can take off their plate and say, this part is running well. Don't worry about this. You have enough on your plate now. And so we're hoping that we can look at contracts, we can look at policies, we can look at Castle, we can look at the in-house counsel. And for as many things as we see that are adequate to continue on to say, don't tackle this in your first year. Once you get your legs under you and you get a little confidence on how the place is running, then maybe there'll be things that you wish to change. So I think that's part of our charter, is to make sure that they have some running room in order to make the key decisions that they have, and not too many.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's actually a couple of questions regarding, do we have an overall plan? So is there a documented overall plan for the transition committee or task list? Is there a project coordinator? Are we using project management tools, et cetera? So, I mean, I can start to, so from the perspective of the overall, Mike is the chair of this committee and sort of the leader of the pack, if you will. As far as management, we have a central repository for the committee, but right now each of our teams are compiling action lists. So I can speak for the building and grounds component. We have the action list, and Kevin Kenny, a member of our team, is actually using a project management tool to identify every action, who owns it, and then we have a red, yellow, green, the classic sort of stoplight chart. Are we on track, getting off track, or flat out off track? So I think we're managing independently now, but there's a significant amount of information and activity that we have to bring together at some point, but we're still in that sort of scrambling, getting as much information as we possibly can.
Okay. I'd like to thank everybody for their time and especially their patience with us this morning and their interest. In the October newsletter, we tried to recognize the volunteer members are all volunteers, I guess, that are supporting the various teams that these gentlemen chair. And unfortunately, because of space limitations, we could not get everybody in there. There's about 30 to 35 people who are basically volunteering their time, which is fantastic. And I know Leon mentioned his team. I hope in the November newsletter, be able to get the rest of the volunteers recognized in there, but we couldn't. And I feel bad for those of you who are out there watching it and saying, hey, why didn't I get my name in there? You were edited out, but not by me. There was just, we ran out of space. We ran out of space in the publication, so we had to shorten our article a little bit. So anything else? If not, we are meeting on the 22nd of October, and that's hopefully we'll see you again. Thank you very much.